This episode is sponsored by Nerdgeese. Support our show using code Gam1ng for a 10% discount.
And welcome to Sanity Podcast 6. I'm your host, Mr. Black, alongside Asian Jesus, as always. And this week we're going to continue our exploration further into the realms of overlooked games. Now, the first game we have on our list today is... it's a good one. It's from 2005 on the PS2 and original Xbox. And it's one of Rockstar's overlooked games, in my opinion. It is The Warriors. Now, this was released in 2005 on the PS2 and Xbox, and later in 2007 on the PSP. It's a free-roaming 3D beat-em-up with fantastic controls and some amazing, amazing backstory that leads into the events of the film. Now, Matthew, I know you're a big fan of this game as much as I am. Give me your take on The Warriors.
This one is just... It's a stellar game. I remember picking it up. I picked it up for the PSP years ago. And originally I wasn't expecting much out of it. But the further you got into it, it starts off interesting. And as a fan of the film, I was a bit confused how it started off so back. But God does it build up. And it just helps flesh out those characters so much. It's just... It was extremely addictive, and especially the closer and closer you get up to the point where it kicks off for the film, and you're just so far into it. I just can't believe how forgotten it got, though. For those,
I know, I have to say it's criminal how overlooked this game was.
And it's such unfortunate that it's like even Rockstar has left it back in the past kind of thing, where they could bring it back. I mean, I'm surprised I haven't seen it on the PSN network yet.
Well, it's good news. It is.
Oh, it is?
It is. It's on the PlayStation Network. The PS2 version is on the PlayStation Network, where we can now upscale the graphics, smooth the graphics out. It's in co-op as well. I mean, if any of Rockstar's games, in my opinion, need a HD remake with online play, it's this one. Let's be honest. I mean, the two-player was fantastic as well at the time, as the screens could split off into the free-roaming levels. I loved the little mini-games as well, like when you were breaking into a car and you had to unlock, the radio, or break into a store and steal all the items and things. It just added a bit more depth, didn't it?
It was stuff that you started seeing in, like, Chinatown Wars and the DS that had already been implemented on The Warriors, where it was like twisting the analog stick to certain degrees and that to unscrew the radio off the casings, it's like the free roam level of it is just, it's surprisingly well detailed, and it's, as Rockstar's good at it, they make a map that's one of those that you can just jump straight in and you can remember the streets you're on. On the PS...
Yeah, it's not too overwhelming at the beginning, is it? That's the good thing. They ease you in gently, don't they?
You've just got simple access at first, and you remember that area quickly, and it lets you explore more as you progress through the game. It's just such a well-detailed game, and you can go off and you can rob stores and all that as well, which is quite a surprise for a game of its age. You just can't really beat it at that point in time. And even now, it's one of those games that's got a lot of what other games don't have at this point.
Yeah, which is depth and quality. I mean, it shows as well that a beat-em-up game, a scrolling beat-em-up game can still work. If somebody gets this template and moves along with it, I would love to see, somebody take on this template and do more with it. I mean, the level of combat was amazing, wasn't there? There was a vast array of moves you could do. Tandem moves you could do as well. Obviously, moves with weapons. I mean, I was looking at the figures for it the other day, and they made $37 million off it, and that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, which is fairly. I mean, it's fairly respectable, but really, for a Rockstar game,
it was one of those.
It's pretty much chicken feed, isn't it?
Yeah, it's mainly because one, it wasn't like a bully game, it wasn't like a GTA game, and it just did stand out there in the corner kind of thing. A lot like Rockstar Table Tennis. It's a very good game.
Yeah.
It just didn't stand out to players at that point, and
I have to say, I mean, I loved starting up the Warriors again the other day, where with the music from the film, and the Ferris wheel at Coney Island, and
they got
it really grabs the atmosphere of the film, doesn't it? It literally sucks you in, especially if you're a fan of the film, like we are. It's fantastically well realised, and as well the voice acting as well, all the proper characters from the film came back. Fantastic. My favourite Cleon, he's a total badass.
They just. Having the original voice actors back just helped out that narrative so much better. And although some sections were recorded from the movie, that's for the movie parts. The initial speech at the beginning as well, recreating that through the game engines was just brilliant. And it really just sunk you back into that feel. Of how many thousands of cops are in this city and how many thousands of gang members in this city. And it just brings you back into that film. And for those that have seen the movie as well, the whole ending sequence really just does go through the whole film. So, although you've got...
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, obviously, it's sort of the first 3/4 of the game are the events leading up to the film, and then you get to play...
There's heaps of...
Sort of the last quarter of the game.
There's heaps of hours of gameplay.
And as well, there was the flashback sections. Yeah, there was the flashback sections as well that added further detail, didn't they, to the story. I mean, it was an extremely well-written game, and a very, the canon that they used for it was amazing. I was very impressed. Sam Houser doing some fantastic work in the script writing, as usual.
Yeah, it's just so painful to see this game as just one of the forgotten classics, and it's such a shame to actually be sitting here to talk about it now, because it shouldn't be.
Well, this is why we're here.
It shouldn't be.
This is why we're here, people. It's $7.99 on PlayStation Network. That's how much it is. And you have the luxury of upscaling it on the PS3 as well, smoothing out some of the textures and everything. And that's another thing as well, the damage models as well, as you were beating people up and stuff, and you were getting black eyes and bloody faces and cuts all over and stuff. It was really well done, wasn't it? Especially for PS2 hardware as well.
Oh, yeah, even on the PSP. It really did push it. And it was another surprise to see a game with such quality in it. They got a lot of the graphical shaking that Rockstar had with, what would it be, GTA, Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories.
Yeah, it was actually the same company. It was Rockstar Leeds. Yeah. Big up Leeds, who translated it over.
Well, with Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories, graphically, they had a few issues where it would have, model jumping while in cutscenes, where the Warriors just completely smoothed that over. And... yeah, it's just a brilliant game on both platforms. Well, all three platforms. Yeah, it's just I get a bit speechless about it, to be honest, because it's just a fantastic. It is a fantastic game.
It is a fantastic game, though, and people, you do need to go out there and seek out the Warriors, because
also find the arcade.
Do yourself a favour and play it, and play it with some friends as well. And this goes out to Rockstar. If you're listening to this, we know some of you do listen to this. Please make a HD remake of the Warriors and put online co-op in, please, because we need it. I'll buy it for £15. How about that? So there you go.
I'd buy it for a bit
I will
more,
definitely buy it.
Yeah.
I'd definitely buy it.
A full pack, you sell the game, you sell the movie, you sell a shirt or something.
Yeah.
Have a nice bundle pack that will
have the whole shebang.
Get the good fans in. And as you're saying, with carrying that on, there is a comic book series that actually follows the rescue. Was it Ajax who gets arrested?
Yeah.
the comic book series actually goes along of his breaking him out of prison. So,
well, I actually know that Rockstar were going to do a spiritual sequel to it, sort of set in the 60s. I think it was a mods and rockers game. Yeah. I can't remember the exact title off the top of my head. It escapes me at the moment. But yes, they were going to do it, and for some reason that got canned. So, come on, Rockstar, bring back the Warriors. Let's be having you. Let's be having you, because, come on, online play, 4-player co-op, it'd be unbelievable. It'd be an unbelievable translation.
I tell you what, actually, because I've been getting onto GTA Online now, some of the servers are starting to feel some stability. The music in online is actually very, very familiar to the Warriors. To be honest, it's just when you're hearing that, you just feel like you're going to have some baseball furies just appearing.
Well, that was another thing, wasn't it? Like, when you'd finish the game, you could actually unlock the other gangs, couldn't you? And you could play as the baseball furies and some of the other ones. I always love the baseball furies because they look totally awesome.
Yeah, there was also the arcade machine in the Warriors hideout, which took us back to the retro beat 'em up. Where you ended up having to beat ghosts of Cyrus and all that. But yeah,
it's just those little attentions to detail, isn't it? Again, that make it all the more immersive. There was actually an Xbox Live Arcade Warriors beat 'em up released
horrible.
a few years ago. I think it was 2009, and it was absolutely terrible. No, it was diabolical.
We're all excited. We saw the Warriors rock up.
Whoever made that should have been lynched. As a matter of fact, we'll start another witch hunt. That's what we'll have a Gaming Sanity Witch Hunt 2.
Yeah, no, that one was
what we'll have.
That one was just shocking. I remember having that on a demo disc, and I went, "Oh, the Warriors, fantastic! Let's have a go." Nah, even from the demo,
it was diabolical.
The demo had about as much excitement come out of it as much as the demo for Duke Nukem for you.
Well, let's not even get into that. Well, that's for another day. Now, game number 2 is an overlooked game as it is at the moment. It wasn't particularly overlooked when it first came out, but this particular version is. And it is Doom 3, the BFG edition that came out in 2012 on Xbox 360, PC, and PS3. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because A, Doom 3 is a fantastic game anyway. 2, it's going for about £10 and less now. And 3, it's the best version of the game there is. Doom 3 is now, instead of being a survival horror game like it was, whipping your flashlight out and then getting your gun out again like it was back in 2004, it's actually like a proper Doom game now with lots of ammo drops. You can actually go gung-ho and start blowing the forces of hell into Kingdom Come where they come from. Now, I sent you this, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
I sent you this over to Australia because you weren't able to get it, and so I sent it over. Now, what do you think of it? What were your impressions?
Well, yeah, I mean, Doom 3 is available in Australia now. You sent it during the speculation of whether it was going to release or not, which was a bit of a bizarre turn of events since it was already a release game. Yeah, having in a HD version is, one, it's showing what the developers originally intended for it. Back when it was originally released, ID had actually made it so the performance of the game was not ready for the computers that were already out at that point. It was really one of the secret benchmarks of the generation. Yeah,
it was a fantastic engine when it came out back in 2004. It was up there with Far Cry and Half-Life 2. That's what you bought a PC for back in those days, people. Those 3 games.
And some of the best computers couldn't even handle it at that point.
No.
Yeah, you couldn't get up to full graphics until probably a few months after, when the hardware was specifically designed to pull out that kind of performance. Yeah, with the newer version, it did take that horrendous survival horror aspect out a bit. Although there's still a few jumps that were originally there that can still get to a few players.
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few. I mean, it was a creepy game, and it still is. I mean, that's one thing. It does have an amazing atmosphere, and the sound design on it as well is second to none. It's exceptionally good sound design.
But yeah, this game really did need to just not try and be the straight-out survival horror. You really did need to have a whole heap of guns, and you just needed to go nuts through the facilities. The main part was it was just too much of a hassle with just pulling the torch out, and even with the mass amount of guns, it still can be a bit of a tricky game because of just one of its time where making games as hard as possible was the norm.
You'd sort of get random enemies spawning behind you and things like that.
Doom is just notorious for sending as many enemies as they possibly can at you.
Absolutely. Now, the thing with this pack as well that I really enjoyed was it was not just Doom 3. You also got the Resurrection of Evil, the add-on pack, which we'll discuss in a minute. The Lost Levels as well. Doom 1, Doom 2, enhanced graphics, 60 frames a second, and it's £10, people. Come on. You've got to go look it up. Do yourself a favour and go check this game out. You should do that. I mean, in anybody's book, that is a bargain.
Yeah.
I mean, you can pay nearly £10 for Doom 2 and Doom 1 on Xbox Live Arcade. Let alone you're getting Doom 3, Resurrection of Evil, and the Lost Levels as well. Now, the one thing I will say about this is that it was way ahead of its time in the sense of its storytelling. And obviously, it wasn't a particularly complicated story, but I'm alluding to the notebooks and the notepads and the audio logs. Long before Bioshock came up with all this, Doom 3 was doing it, and there's nothing more creepy than in Doom 3 going down a corridor with your shotgun out, in the dark, with one of the scientists going on about how they've made a massive mistake, the forces of hell are coming, and it just generates that bit of unease, doesn't it, as you're going down the corridor.
Oh, even that with the maintenance technicians, when they're actually talking about the strange goings-on in the facility, they're completely oblivious to what's actually going on in the laboratories. They, suspect stuff at the same time, they just try not to believe it, and as you progress through, again, it's something that you didn't see till stuff like Bioshock, and even Dead Space tried to pull some of this off as well later on. It was just that calm before the storm where everybody started, I suspect something's odd, I've been hearing voices come down that hallway and all that. And, and as you get closer and closer to more of the sources, you still come across these notes where people suspect things due to the time. And it just gets psychological on the in-game characters. You can just feel for them. It's just like, what is going on? It's just,
I always remember that creepy bit when you go look in the mirror and it's like that undead version of yourself looking back, in the toilet. And I was like, whoa, that's a bit nuts. Because you can actually completely avoid that toilet, can't you? I mean, you can actually not go there and particularly see that part. I mean, I've watched a couple of my friends play it, and they never even went in that toilet and saw that part. So, yes, getting freaked out in the toilets, people. Oh, aye. It reminded me of Evil Dead, actually. When Ash sort of goes mental in the second one, and he comes out of that. He goes flying into that tree and ends up in that massive puddle and comes up looking like a zombie. It kind of reminded me of that.
Oh yeah,
completely correct.
Such a shame they've ruined that movie series already with the latest installation.
Well, the latest installation, I've watched it. I don't particularly know what all the fuss is about, to be honest, but there we are. I watched it as a Evil Dead fan, and I don't know. Don't know what all the fuss was about.
I didn't find it that fantastic a movie, but yeah, the originals were still the best.
Now going on to the Resurrection of Evil, the add-on pack for Doom 3, with the not ripped off gravity gun at all gravity gun. Now, it does add something to the game, though, doesn't it? Catching, monsters' fireballs in mid-air and all these other things. I mean, what did you find of the levels? I thought the level design was a lot more hectic as well. What did you think?
Resurrection of Evil was just a good run back into it. And although a lot of the areas you do still walk through some familiar grounds, at the same time, they just loved messing around with the mechanics at that point. again, the gravity gun was just there to add a bit more spice to it, and it was just something new to learn. But yeah, Resurrection, like I've probably gone through that game, I'd say a bit half cut, but still, even then it was enjoyable. Yeah, it's just, I mean, the storyline does get put back in there, and they did put a nice bit of detail into it as well. It's just, yeah, after a bit of time away from Doom 3 initially as well, hopping back in and seeing what happens is it's quite a nice take. So we always need that follow-on from the main game.
And also, the lost levels were really good as well, sort of giving you the marine side.
Yeah, no, that was
basically the Marines who get taken down, who you hear over the intercom getting taken down at the beginning.
There's a
you get to sort of play as them as well. Yeah, really good add-on. I have to say though, overall as a pack, especially for £10, I mean it's ridiculous. And just a little fact. It sold 3.5 million copies when it first came out in 2000, but it's actually id's most successful game. And also one of their most controversial, apart from Rage, which I personally loved and thought was a fantastic start to a series, and they really need to make more Rage, but make it more like Skyrim, with guns. But there we are.
Yeah, and
that's a conversation for another day.
The problem with Rage, though, is Bethesda would rather have them do a shooter rather than do another Fallout. That's part of their repertoire thing.
Well, the thing is, the graphics engine was amazing. It ran at 60 frames a second. It was pure id shooting, wasn't it, with the shotgun and stuff. I love the fact though that you had to use all the little robots and little sentry guns and everything. You had to use those, and you had to fire from the hip as well. There was none of this iron sighting, that you get on Call of Duty or whatever. It was good old fashioned shooting, and the shotgun was very satisfying. And I thought as well, the world had build up and the mythos and stuff. There was a lot of room for exploration there. It reminded me a lot of Trigun as well, the anime and manga Trigun, sort of the old Western sort of.
Well, it felt
atmosphere.
For me, it felt like a very HD version of Borderlands, but without the multiplayer. So.
But yeah, I think I do hope they can make more with that series, because it was definitely something worth doing.
Oh yeah.
Because the car combat was fun as well. I mean, I think they missed a trick just having the online as car combat. If you mix car combat with actually getting out of the car and shooting people, I think they could have been on to a winner there, But yeah, somebody made some crazy decision over at id Software, so whoever that was, well done.
I did.
You missed out on making a lot of money.
I did like on the fact that they did cross-platform it as well. Because I used to, in my sheer boredom.
I mean, it was quite ironic that the PC version was the most destroyed when it first came out. The PS3 and 360 versions ran fine. The PC version was all over the place.
Now, the iOS devices had a version of Rage as well. It was mainly an on-rail shooter. As much like the Doom game that was also on there as well. But they did pull the graphics out as best they could on an iOS device, which was quite a surprise, and it was good to see that. Yeah, there was two versions of the game. One was the HD and one was the standard. The HD version was a whole lot of memory on your little iPods, but still. And you used the accelerometer to aim and used the button to shoot and all that, and it took a lot from the in-game battle show that was in there, and you actually went through familiar levels that you actually played in Rage anyway. So
that's good. Right, well, moving on to game number 3. And this is a good one, people. This is Valkyria Chronicles on the PS3, released in 2008. Now, it's loosely set in Europe, before World War II. There's an element called Ragnite ore that is a huge commodity for the forces. It's sort of set in 1935, and it is actually a real-time third-person strategy game, which sounds very bizarre when you first say that. Are you familiar with the Valkyria Chronicles series at all, Matthew?
Not in great detail, to be honest. yeah, as I keep on going, and this is the usual. Again, it's something that's on my radar, but I never really get the chance to go into it. You can hear as much as you want, but when it comes to work and life, you just really end up picking up the latest craze game and start going on there instead of something that's a bit less hyped up.
Oh, this is why we're here now. Now, Valkyria Chronicles is essentially a strategy role-playing game. The thing that will strike most people about it when they first see it is sort of the cel-shaded anime watercoloured graphics.
Yeah.
I mean, they are amazing. They look like a painting, you know, like a proper watercoloured painting.
And the graphics are quite a pretty view, to be honest.
Yeah, they're really good. I mean, I have to say, I haven't seen many games like it, to be honest.
It's a nice mix of watercolour and anime.
Yes. Well, interestingly, the developers said they used that style as well, where it was kind of sort of watercolour, but it was anime, but had the watercolour aspect to sort of emphasise the horrors of what actually happens. Because there's some quite difficult subjects dealt with. You know, there's massacres, there's villagers getting executed. You know, there's some quite serious story elements in there. The story is very good, actually. How it pans out now. Essentially, how the game starts is you will have sort of a top-down view of the level. You get your basic objectives of what you've got to do. And then you select your character, whoever it is. Now, certain characters are good at certain things. Certain characters are good in certain sort of land, sort of types of land. Like some will be good at shooting from hills, others will be good at handling grass, and so forth. And essentially, what happens is you will choose one of your characters, and then it will come down into a third-person, behind-the-shoulder view, and you will then progress through the level, hide, or go to shoot some enemies, or whatever. Now, the beauty of this is you have a certain amount of time to do your actions, and you have 3 turns generally. But what you can do is you can just use one character and use all the turns. But the problem is, if you do use one character and use all the turns, then they get tired then, after doing X amount of actions, and they then have to have a bit of a rest, or they lose a lot of health, or whatever. Now, the beauty of it is, as well, is when you're doing the combat, you actually have to aim the guns yourself. It's not just a simple press a button and the combat happens. You actually have to aim and actually do the targeting yourself. So it's quite strategic as well.
Helps get that.
But it also has that element of real time. It's not just like we showed Front Mission the other week.
Yeah.
Where it's very sort of turn-based, and you don't really have any control over where you shoot.
It helps get rid of that
certain body parts.
That numerous moves of miss, and then when it's the enemy's turn, they just seem to be able to hit you perfectly. That is one of the most irritating things about a lot of the style games that you can find out there. One of them would have been the original Fallout, which was just horrible for that.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of dice rolling going on in the background, generally, in those games, which, thankfully, there isn't in this, because you have pretty much control over what you're doing, and obviously certain enemies will be weak to certain weapons, tanks will have weak spots on them, like engines, you'll have to flank, the tanks, and things like that. I mean, again, a criminally overlooked game, critically well received, amazing story, amazing visuals, amazing soundtrack, really good gameplay, good long game as well, about 20-30 hours. And again, Sega, as usual. I'll be banging on about this. I'm sure for numerous shows to come. Sega and their marketing wisdom comes up again. One of the best franchises they've had, and one of the best games they could have made in a long time. And did it get marketed? No, nobody had any clue about this game really, unless you were a hardcore strategy fan. And how many times have you heard people say about the various consoles, "There's no good strategy games"? Well, there is. And this is one of them. This is one of the good strategy games. Now, also, I know you're quite into your handhelds.
Yeah.
The actual sequels, 2 and 3, actually came out on the PSP, which just bemused me. Obviously, that shows you how well it's sold
great.
On the PS3, though, doesn't
Here's the thing, though. It's also cropped up on the Vita. So, really, one of the least advertised games crops up on the least advertised portable gaming system.
I mean, I know in Japan, the handhelds will be fairly big and whatever, and I suppose that's where the market for this game has been.
The Vita flopped in Japan. The Vita flopped pretty much everywhere. So It was. Yeah.
Well, the PSP did alright though, didn't it? The PSP did okay.
Yeah, the PSP did really, really well, but that was coming out the PS2 era. The unfortunate thing about the Vita was, one, Sony has some really bizarre advertising in general, and when it came to marketing the Vita, it really wasn't that effective, and you rarely saw it appear anyway. And I picked up the Vita because I knew what kind of hardware was on it, and I knew what you could see out of it. But unfortunately, because the massive flopper they took on it, developers really didn't want to support it that much either.
And obviously as well, if you get a PS4, it'll be kind of like having a tablet controller, which is awesome.
Here's the thing: it's like the Vita should. It's good to see the Vita's going to have a second life to it, and to try and make it popular once again. But to be honest, it feels, because they've already tarnished the first couple of years of its release, still trying to sell it on the PS4 just feels a bit half.
I think the problem is though with the Vita is it doesn't have it has a lot of console games on it, console length games. You can't do a 20-hour game on the train. You can't even think about doing a massive amount of story on a. That's where the Nintendo and the DS got it right. Short games or long games broken up into small sections. Like for instance, Fire Emblem, one of the greatest strategy role-playing games. You can play that in bursts.
Either that,
on your way to work or from work.
Either that, or have a few.
It's
flagship
not like Killzone,
titles.
is it, or something like that, where you can have half-an-hour levels.
Yeah, it's.
Or Uncharted or things like that.
That's the one thing that the PSP got right originally. They had a lot of flagship titles for themselves. Yes, they did port over to the PS2 later on, but it did just start off so very well for the PSP. Especially Siphon Filter Dark Mirror. That was just brilliant, and if you played it on the PS2, then yeah, it got even better. But Siphon Filter Dark Mirror is probably one of the most successful games that was on the PSP, as well as the GTA titles as well. You just needed titles that really wasn't on the other consoles.
Well, I was very interested by Gravity Rush actually on the Vita and the little Blig Panic game and stuff.
It was good to see.
But again, it's expensive, and the fact is, I could buy a console for that.
Yeah.
For the same price.
It was good to see Wipeout on the PS Vita by itself, as well as on the PSP. But yeah, Wipeout 2048 was one of their initial release titles as well. Just problem is the analog sticks really just weren't big enough for that kind of game. Although still very good, the portable version really it could have been a lot better. And to be honest, probably the better Wipeouts in my opinion was at Wipeout Fusion, where they actually implemented a lot wider areas for racing anyway.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Now, just remember, people, Valkyria Chronicles at the moment is going for £10 in England. I'm sure it's dirt cheap as well in the rest of the world at the moment, because nobody bought it apart from in Japan, and I bought it, obviously. And Valkyria Chronicles 2 and 3, though, I may have to seek those out on the PSP. It's a shame I can't play PSP games on my PS3. That is a shame. It's a shame I can't download them, because I would definitely download those two and continue. Now, one thing I will say, though, is the story is very engaging, actually. And that is one thing you definitely need to look into, is Valkyria Chronicles. Fantastic game. Really good levels of strategy. And a fantastic art style. Great story. And a very overlooked game, again. Now, people, what we have is we are going to be running a competition starting on Friday when we do our next show. And what we are going to do is we're going to come up with a competition where if you can guess one of the overlooked games we are going to be featuring in the next show, you will win a t-shirt. Now, we will give some hints, and the first person to get it right will get one of our awesome Gaming Sanity t-shirts, which are, quite frankly, amazing, aren't they, Matthew? Let's be honest.
Oh,
they
yeah.
are. They are amazing.
Yeah. No.
Amazing T-shirts. But we will be returning on Friday as usual, and we're going to try and return to our sort of usual schedule of games. But what we'll do is I will leave some hints in the about section about the games next week, and if you can about the games on Friday, and if you can guess one, you will win a T-shirt.